Imagine for a moment that the spiritual truths you've been taught your entire life were incomplete. A carefully curated selection of teachings designed not for your liberation, but to keep you spiritually subdued. What if the most profound, life-changing insights of Jesus were intentionally hidden to preserve the power structures of the religious institutions that emerged after his death? For centuries, the Church has been the gatekeeper of Jesus' teachings, offering salvation through a specific doctrine while maintaining authority over the spiritual lives of millions. But buried beneath centuries of dogma lies a radical, empowering truth, one that was never meant to be controlled by a select few. This hidden knowledge, suppressed over time, holds the potential to transform not just your understanding of spirituality, but the very way you see the world and your place within it. This is the story of the lost teachings of Jesus, the wisdom that could set your soul free. The image of Jesus that most of us know today is that of a shepherd guiding his flock, a loving figure within the framework of the Church. But what if this familiar image was only a fraction of the true essence of his message? Far from advocating blind obedience to hierarchies or submission to institutionalized religion, Jesus' original teachings were revolutionary. His message wasn't about following external rules or being afraid of judgment. It was about discovering the divine within yourself. At its core, Jesus' teachings were about spiritual autonomy, the idea that each individual has a direct connection to the divine, and that this connection doesn't require intermediaries like priests, rituals, or churches. This was a dangerous idea for the religious authorities of the time, and it remains so today. Why? Because a spiritually autonomous person is impossible to control. A person who knows they have direct access to God and understands their divine essence becomes free from fear, guilt, and manipulation. So what did the Church do with this radical message of freedom? It hid it. The institutionalized version of Christianity was shaped to serve the interests of those in power, distorting Jesus' teachings into something that kept people dependent on religious authority. One of the most profound aspects of Jesus' hidden teachings is the concept of reincarnation. While this idea is absent from the mainstream Christian narrative, ancient texts and esoteric traditions suggest that Jesus spoke of the soul as something that transcends a single lifetime. He understood life as a continuous journey of spiritual evolution, with each existence offering opportunities for growth and learning. But the Church, in its desire to control, eradicated this idea from its official teachings. Why? Because reincarnation empowers individuals. If people believed they could evolve through multiple lives, correcting past mistakes and growing closer to the divine, the fear of eternal damnation would lose its hold. Without that fear, the Church's control over the masses would weaken. Instead of reincarnation, the Church offered a linear view of existence: one life, one chance, and an eternal heaven or hell awaiting at the end. This narrative creates dependence. If you fear eternal punishment, you're more likely to follow the rules, attend the rituals, and submit to the authority of the Church. But the lost teaching of reincarnation offers a different perspective. It invites you to see life as an ever-evolving process, where each of us is on a continuous path toward spiritual enlightenment. It shifts the focus from fear to growth, from control to empowerment. The true essence of Jesus' message can be summed up in one revolutionary idea: spiritual autonomy. He didn't advocate for complex rituals or a hierarchy of spiritual authorities. Instead, he taught that the kingdom of heaven is within each of us. The divine is not something to be accessed through a priest or church, but through direct personal experience. This teaching, however, was too dangerous for the early Church to embrace. Spiritual autonomy threatens the very foundation of institutionalized religion, which relies on the idea that only a select few can mediate between humanity and God. If people realized they could connect with the divine on their own, the entire religious structure would collapse. And so this core teaching of Jesus was suppressed, replaced by a system of control that involved rituals, confessions, and obedience to religious authorities. The Church became the gatekeeper of salvation, creating a structure where people were taught that they needed someone else to connect with God. But what if Jesus' true message was that you don't need a gatekeeper? What if the divine is already within you, waiting to be discovered? This is the liberating truth that was hidden, the truth that each of us has the power to connect with the divine through our own consciousness, without the need for intermediaries. While the church worked to suppress these empowering teachings, they didn't disappear entirely. Fragments of this lost knowledge were preserved in esoteric traditions like Gnosticism, the Rosicrucians, and other mystical paths. These groups understood that true spiritual enlightenment wasn't about obeying external rules, but about seeking inner truth and experiencing the divine directly. The Rosicrucians, for instance, have long been the keepers of ancient spiritual knowledge. Their teachings go beyond the physical realm, addressing the mysteries of consciousness, energy, and the cosmos. They view the human soul as something much greater than what traditional Christianity allows, a divine spark that has the potential to evolve and awaken to higher states of being. Sacred geometry, spiritual alchemy, and the laws of the universe are just some of the tools they use to guide individuals on the path to self-realization. Esoteric traditions like these preserve the essence of Jesus' true message, his call to spiritual freedom and personal empowerment. They offer an alternative path to the rigid structures of organized religion, one that emphasizes personal growth, direct experience of the divine, and the realization of one's own spiritual potential. One of the most significant losses in the Church's distortion of Jesus' teachings is the erasure of the divine feminine. Nowhere is this more evident than in the story of Mary Magdalene. For centuries, she has been portrayed as a repentant sinner, a fallen woman saved by Jesus. But this narrative is a far cry from the truth. In Gnostic texts and other non-canonical scriptures, Mary Magdalene is depicted as one of Jesus' closest disciples, perhaps even his most important one. She was not only a spiritual leader in her own right, but also a keeper of deep spiritual knowledge. Some texts refer to her as the Apostle of the Apostles, a woman who understood the mysteries of the divine in ways that even the male disciples could not. But this view of Mary Magdalene was too threatening to the patriarchal hierarchy that formed the early church. Acknowledging her as a leader, a woman with spiritual authority, would have challenged the male-dominated power structures that sought to control the narrative of Christianity. And so her role was diminished, her story distorted to fit a more convenient image of a repentant sinner. By suppressing Mary Magdalene's true role, the Church also suppressed the feminine aspect of the divine. The balance between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, an essential harmony for spiritual awakening, was lost. Reintegrating the feminine into our understanding of spirituality is key to unlocking the full power of Jesus' teachings and recognizing the divine potential in each of us. Gnosticism, an ancient belief system that emphasizes personal spiritual knowledge over institutionalized religion, offers a powerful framework for understanding the lost teachings of Jesus. The Gnostics believed that every person carries a divine spark within them, a piece of the divine fullness, or pleroma. This idea was radical because it suggested that each individual could access God directly, without the need for an institution or hierarchy to mediate that relationship. The Church saw Gnosticism as a threat and worked to suppress it, destroying texts and persecuting Gnostic followers. But despite these efforts, Gnostic ideas persisted, surviving in mystical and esoteric traditions that have continued to pass down this ancient wisdom. At the heart of Gnosticism is the belief that true spiritual awakening doesn't come from following external rules or obeying religious authorities. It comes from seeking the truth for oneself, from experiencing the divine directly through personal knowledge and self-discovery. This was the essence of Jesus' message, a call to awaken to the reality of who we are, divine beings with the power to connect with the universe. What would happen if we rediscovered these lost teachings today? What if we understood that our connection to God doesn't require fear, rituals, or intermediaries? The hidden wisdom of Jesus offers a path to spiritual freedom, one that is open to anyone willing to seek the truth within themselves. We live in a time when more and more people are searching for deeper meaning, for something beyond the structures and systems that have defined spirituality for centuries. The lost teachings of Jesus offer an answer to that search. They remind us that the divine is not something external, not something we must strive to reach, but something that already exists within us. It's time to reclaim the spiritual autonomy that was hidden from us. The journey to enlightenment begins not with obedience to external authorities, but with a deep understanding of your own divine nature. The truth has been hidden for too long, but it is still there, waiting for those who are ready to seek it. Are you ready?